Australia's taken a world-leading step with our new social media laws built on a growing body of research showing how addictive digital design harms developing brains. But while raising the minimum age for social media use will help protect young people, the truth is simple and uncomfortable. Real change begins at home. If we want our kids to have a healthier relationship with screens, parents must first examine their own, and healthy habits will start right there. Our guest to kick off the first program for 2026 is Dr Danielle Einstein. For 30 years, Danielle has worked as a clinical psychologist. Her research on anxiety and uncertainty has helped inform the recent new Online Safety Amendment Bill and is shaping global approaches to online safety. Danielle has also looked at how to get drawn into traps to either stamp out uncertainty when it makes us worried or seek the thrill of connection to lift our mood. I'm Ian Bunston. Welcome to Monday Matters. Welcome, Danielle. It's wonderful to have you as a guest today.
It's lovely to meet you, Ian, online.
Danielle, can you describe to us what healthy habits using technology for parents actually looks like?
Yes. So I like to think about the fact that kids copy what we do. They don't listen to what we say. And of course that's modeling. So the word that I use to describe this is the idea that we all need to have healthy device discipline, okay? And it's kind of like a muscle that we're going to build up. So if I could summarize just quickly 5 specific tips that I think are useful for parents and for grandparents. The first one would be to put phones away during meals, which is a very obvious one. And also computers, just so that they're just not even in sight. The second would be to have portable devices away when people are out and about. The third would be to actually practice being less available online and learning that other people can do without us for periods of time, and they actually will wait for our attention rather than feeling that we needed to be immediately available. The fourth would be that it's really important for parents and grandparents to show that they also know how to use screen-free ways of calming themselves down and entertaining themselves. So going back to the library to borrow books and having puzzles set up in a room or crafts and other sorts of activities that us as adults are actually using. And the final piece of advice that I've had really for the whole of Australia in light of that social media regulation that came in is that we need to move our addictive technology to one device that's in the house or home, and that should be in one location rather than on a person all the time. And the reason for that is because we are drawn to look like our worries, the uncertainty, and then the sight of the device, whether it be your phone or computer, will draw you to think, oh, what might be there, and it will switch on a worry, and we're just so tempted if we don't have that device discipline to do that. So if we move the addictive tech to one computer or iPad or wherever it is that's used in one location, it helps break that cycle where we're just drawn in by the sight or sound of the device. I'm not going to go into more now. That's just touching on it.
So, Danielle, from my understanding, parents often think their own screen use is harmless, especially if they're not handing the device to toddlers or to children. But research says otherwise, and I find this fascinating. Can you tell us about this?
Yeah, well, the term to keep in mind here is technoference, which is the idea that technology gets in between us and the people who are around us. So if you think about a toddler, for example, when they're making a conversational bid, so they point out, hey, truck or plane to you as a grandparent, and if the parent or grandparent is occupied with their screen, obviously something else that's really important, they just don't notice the child making that effort to connect. And so the child is actually learning that attention must be competed for, and that caregiver is not predictable. And what we see when that's happening a lot of the time is problems with self-regulation, with more tantrums and anxiety. And the other really important thing that we've seen last year is just that daily screen time, whether that be passive or even active when a child is at a young age, is actually so one of the pieces of data I'll give you is that daily screen time before a child is 1 year old, what we've seen is changes in the brain at 18 months, when you look at 18 months, and then that those children are less able to control their attention at 18 months. And when those children are 9, they're less able to think on their feet and use their working memory. Okay, now there's a lot of complex data, which what I've tried to do in my work last year to support Australians and the world understand the research is put together really clear information that layers down where the messages are to the data and the studies specifically that they draw on, to pictures and infographics that people can understand, so that nothing I say can't be traced back to research. And I really would recommend that anyone who's interested in looking harder at that research have a look at that. It's the piece that I'm drawing on now is called Early Learning from Screens. How, when, and why are we sure these are beneficial? And it then is a deep dive. And the reason I've had to do this is because the language that's used that comes from marketing, basically, and that we see in the media, in advertising, but also in research studies about educational benefits, we've got to really question what the research behind that is saying. And so what I did with my team was analyze that and produce, as I say, the information for every person so that they can see, hang on a second, that's not what's happening. These screens are not providing educational benefits when used at a young age. And so, yes, hopefully you can hear that, like, there's a lot of data that's been coming out that we've looked at to show, hang on, there's something really wrong going on in society at the moment if we're not concerned and changing our behaviours.
Danielle, I want to turn to the discussion about the legislation and the introduction of this federal government legislation to raise the minimum age of children to legally use social media. Do you think this is going to be helpful? And I have to say, I've got to congratulate you for your part that you've played in this.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's already been helpful, Anne. So the ways that it's been helpful specifically are that we now have schools not inadvertently using social media. So schools have had to work really hard to think about where teachers or, for instance, students were automatically being given social media accounts. So what had been happening was no one really realized that it was damaging. So you can understand that for a teacher, it might be a good way, or feel like a good way, to make a lesson more interesting or engaging, to set homework where you upload information via social media and where you're helping children to develop their profile or think about different concepts. Like it's been sort of the topic du jour that's been engaging. So we've stopped that in its tracks. We've completely reversed that. Secondly, we've got social media platforms doing what they should have been doing from the start, which is they always said that there was a minimum age. They had 13, we've made it 16, but they were never putting the technological side on it to stop that's happening, right? So we've asked them to have some skin in the game and actually do something to help parents. So that's the second thing that's happening. And of course, that's going to evolve and they're going to have to get better and better at that. But Australia's set that expectation, and there are many countries around the world that are looking at that now and joining us. Thirdly, because of all that debate, like I think there was no family that missed this discussion at the end of last year. Every barbecue before Christmas was talking about social media and what's going on in your child's life and what's happened at your child's community. And really, we've just seen the most alarming levels of school refusal, depression, anxiety, cyberbullying. Cyberbullying went up 455% over the last 5 years. And these children are being affected in real ways that will impact their future, not only their brain development, but the way that they view each other. And to say to them, okay, well, it's fine that school's not nice because you've got this online social group and they might be on the other side of Australia, but that's where you go to look after yourself. Well, that means that those children are not developing healthy social skills, and they're having all these other impediments because of what social media delivers. And it's not actually helpful for building your capacity in the world for handling things. Sorry, I'll stem my talking. But I think what we've done is we've started to change the norms, and we're going to have less parents put children on when those children are 9, 10, 11 at least. I think there'll still be hurdles in what's going on with the 13 to 15-year-olds because the social media platforms won't get that right immediately. But we're starting the ball rolling, and the more countries that join us, the better. And we're changing norms. So I think there's no question that it is working, but it's only one thing of many that we need to do to help emotional development and brain development and our communities in Australia.
And it would seem from some of the reports that are coming out in the media, Australia is actually setting the pace, setting the trend on these changes, which is really admirable and very, very successful, I think. You touched on this just a little bit earlier, and this comes out in the media a lot as well, about the responsibility of the managers of these social platforms. Are they really doing enough, do you think?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that's been brought up because, for instance, the changes that you'll see now as a result in schools is if they're using any sort of communication platforms, that they're now being told by the eSafety Commission and getting guidelines to include proper moderation of more than one person. So, say 2 staff members, because what we saw going on is this unkind aggressive behavior online, which may be what someone says, but also might be the way that they act with one another in a group. So what we've got is everyone waking up to what's been going on, that we've given this weapon to children at an age where their friendships are still changing, where they're jostling for attention and they don't yet know where they fit in and what they're good at. So we're actually taking responsibility, and that involves then realizing what we've given and what then we as adults need to do to make sure that the communities that we're setting up are actually healthy.
Danielle, a lot of grandparents will be watching and listening today. And I know that we can't delve into this in a great way, but just generally speaking, because it seems that in this day and age, grandparents are spending more time looking after and minding grandchildren than ever before. What advice would you give to them, just briefly?
Well, I think this is where I wanted to actually point out how confusing the screen time guidelines are for all of us, because I think, first of all, grandparents can listen to the messages I said at the beginning about what parents need to do and be similar in terms of the changes that we make when we're with grandchildren. But secondly, I really want to point out what's going on in the world, which is, for instance, in December 2024, Spain put out new screen time guidelines. And from the ages of 0 to 6, these guidelines recommend no screen time except for supervised and specific purposes like storytelling or video calls. Okay, that's 0 to 6. And then from 7 to 12, they've got less than 1 hour a day, including school-related use. Now, I think I'll just focus on those ages because that's what grandparents are possibly more involved and more hands-on. That's quite different to Australia's. Australia also does say, I think, no screen use for 0 to 2. Sorry, I'm just double checking my facts here. But Australia says children aged 2 to 5 should have no more than 1 hour per day of screen time. And Australia actually excludes time spent on educational activities in our guidelines, whereas Spain includes educational time. So I think this is an area to watch, but I hope that Australia will sort of, there's lots of issues to sort of resolve before we get to the right answer. But I wanted to sort of, raise it and have people thinking about, well, what is right? I think thinking about that storytelling, I know for grandparents, connection via videos and via phone calls, and that's excellent, all right? And we know that that's fine, that's not harmful, and it's beneficial for grandparents as well as for kids. But just and when you think about what we're doing with social media, we're also saying we're not taking away connection. We're not taking away the ability to talk one-on-one, to send messages one-on-one, or to small groups, or to phone people. So we're getting back to those social skills. Sorry, I know I'm a bit all over the shop with my answer, but
No, that's quite. I can imagine another session just on that one at a later date. If we can get you to come back, it would be fantastic. Before we finish up, just wanted to touch on the Bondi massacre and your involvement there. When we first connected, we are having a chat, and you said to me, "Ink, would you mind if we spoke at the end of the week because I've been called out to play a supportive role in what had happened at Bondi Beach." Can you just tell us about your involvement there and what you did to support?
sure. I went to the police, where the police were collecting witness testimony, and I provided psychological support before or after people were speaking to the police. That was down at Coogee. I also went down to speak with the surf lifesavers to understand what was happening there and what they'd been through, and provide support. And I went to one of the Jewish schools, like actually the night afterwards, to listen to the different responses and to help where I could in unpacking. And I think the other part that I played, obviously, was then doing a little bit of counselling. A lot of my clients were affected, but also really wanting to speak to the media about how people should consume the news and what was going on, because obviously it was so interesting that um, during that massacre, there were so many different perspectives from the people that were part of it. There were people on the beach, there were people going to the beach who were hiding in the pavilion, people sitting at the cafe where, a couple might have split, one's running away in this direction, the other's running towards the danger to see if they can help. And the guilt afterwards was actually huge. And the experience of it was horrific, absolutely horrific. But I think when it comes, if I might draw a side note to social media is a big concern of mine when it comes to this, because I think what social media has done in teenagers, and of course in the Australian community, is it allows people, or it actually helps people amplify via emotional messages, content and arguments that aren't always verified. So we've taken away this element of needing to verify what's going on. And because people enjoy being part of a big story, and we kind of call it virtue signaling, what we've seen is people build their egos around the attention they get online and not around solid, thought through ways of communicating and conversing, like you're organising right here. And I know that one of the things that I've sort of become a little bit braver on and more aware of is the use of the word Zionism, right? Like I would never have said before, I didn't know how to handle those questions when it was being mentioned so aggressively. Yet I would be a Zionist because I believe in a two-state solution. And that's what a two-state solution, that's what Zionists actually, like the meaning of Zionism just does mean that you believe in the right for Israel to exist. I would like it to exist with two states. But I was too scared even to speak out or explain this because of the way that social media and people on social media were so virulently using this word and then associating with other words. And it takes me back to the days where I learned about history and Hitler standing in that big auditorium and the propaganda leaflets, etc., and this fight on propaganda. And I guess I feel that it's important that we debunk language that's been used to be almost a weapon, and that people are really questioning and thinking about the part they're playing. because social media is all about building an audience. And just like the teens build their views of themselves about how many likes they get, right? And then they feel quite fragile and vulnerable afterwards if they're not getting likes. So their aim is to get more likes. That aim is not to provoke thoughtful, considered conversation, right? And to progress where we're going in the world. And we're seeing this polarization. So, yeah, so it concerns me the way that social media can affect communities and is, in fact, affecting the Australian community does actually bother me. But yes, I'm a clinical psychologist who specializes in social media. So I suppose I've got to come back to what's the mental health, what's going on for mental health as well.
Danielle, it's been a fascinating conversation, and I'm in awe of the impact that you've had with regard to social media legislation, but also the recent supportive role that you've played at such a devastating time, what happened at Bondi Beach. Thank you very much for sharing your insights and your thoughts, and we really do appreciate having you as a guest at Monday Matters. Dr. Danielle Einstein is as has been mentioned, is a clinical psychologist and also, might I add, an adjunct fellow at the Macquarie University. Danielle, thank you for being our guest today.